There is a man in your life right now who steps back every time you begin to feel close to him, and you keep wondering what went wrong. But here is something most people never tell you. You are not the reason he pulls away. In many ways, you could be the very person who makes real change possible. The four ideas you are about to hear can completely shift the way he responds to you over time. Stay with me because this is not the usual relationship advice you hear everywhere. We are going deeper into the way an avoidant mind reacts to closeness. These are simple psychological patterns that explain why some men stop running and slowly begin to move toward genuine connection. Many mature women naturally understand these patterns better than they realize, while younger women often overlook them without knowing it. If you have ever met a man who seemed excited about you one day and distant the next, if you have ever questioned yourself because everything felt wonderful until he suddenly became quiet, or if you have blamed yourself for caring too deeply, then keep watching because what you are about to discover may answer questions you have carried for a very long time. Before we continue, type the word open in the comments. Just one word, open. It is a small action, but it reminds you to stay open to a new way of seeing relationships. By the end of this video, you may understand avoidant behavior in a way that changes every future connection you build. And if you enjoy thoughtful conversations that go beyond quick dating tips, make sure you subscribe because every video here is created to help you grow, understand people more deeply, and build healthier relationships. Now stay with me because the next part explains everything, and once you understand it, many confusing moments from your past will suddenly make sense. Before we explore the four important lessons, we need to understand what is happening inside the mind of an avoidant man. Without this foundation, almost every reaction feels confusing, and most relationship advice ends up making the situation worse instead of better. That is why so many people feel stuck in the same painful cycle. They chase harder, hoping it will prove their love. They suddenly become distant because someone told them to make him jealous. They send emotional messages trying to explain every feeling. They search for the perfect conversation that will finally unlock his heart. Yet each attempt often pushes him even farther away. It is not because your intentions are wrong, it is because those actions work against the way his protective system operates. An avoidant man is not naturally cold or uncaring. That is one of the biggest misunderstandings people have. He does not avoid closeness because he lacks emotions. In reality, he often feels emotions very deeply. The difference is that emotional closeness can activate old fears that tell him intimacy is risky. Instead of moving toward connection, when feelings become stronger, his mind often tells him to create distance so he can feel safe again. That reaction can be incredibly confusing for someone who values open communication because what feels like love to you may feel overwhelming to him. Keep watching because this is only the beginning, and the first lesson will reveal why changing your approach, not changing who you are, can completely transform the dynamic between you. Many people believe avoidant men are emotionally unavailable because they do not feel enough. In reality, it is often the opposite. They can experience emotions very deeply, but years ago they learned to connect strong feelings with emotional pain. Somewhere in their past, closeness became linked with disappointment, pressure, or heartbreak. Their mind quietly formed a rule that staying too close to someone could eventually lead to getting hurt. Love began to feel connected with expectations, responsibility, and the fear of losing independence. Over time, their emotional system adapted by creating distance before things became too serious. That distance is not always a choice. It becomes a habit that feels natural. Here is something many people never consider. As a man grows older, these protective habits usually become stronger because they have been repeated for years. His nervous system becomes incredibly skilled at sensing emotional closeness and stepping away before he feels overwhelmed. After doing this again and again, he often no longer notices it happening. It feels automatic, it feels normal, it quietly shapes every relationship he enters. But stay with me because the next part explains why this pattern does not always last forever, and understanding this may completely change the way you see his behavior. There is another side that almost nobody talks about. As the years pass, many avoidant men also become deeply tired of repeating the same cycle. They grow weary of relationships that never become truly meaningful. They become exhausted by always protecting themselves and never fully relaxing around another person. Deep inside, many still want love, companionship, and emotional peace. The challenge is that they never learned how to experience closeness without feeling anxious. That is why emotional safety matters so much. A confident, emotionally grounded woman often brings something different into his world. She understands her own value. She does not panic every time someone needs space. She is not trying to control the relationship or force every answer immediately. She is patient without losing herself. She respects both connection and healthy boundaries. That quiet confidence creates an atmosphere that feels calmer than anything he may have experienced before. For someone who has spent years expecting pressure, calmness feels unfamiliar. It catches his attention. It lowers his guard little by little. Keep watching, because what comes next is where everything starts to shift in a powerful way. The first quality that often changes the entire dynamic is surprisingly simple. She refuses to make his temporary distance define her worth. Think about what usually happens when an avoidant man suddenly becomes quiet. Many people immediately assume they made a mistake. They replay every conversation in their mind. They wonder whether one sentence changed everything. They send message after message asking if something is wrong or whether they upset him. Those reactions are completely understandable because uncertainty creates anxiety. Most people simply want reassurance, yet from his perspective, something very different is happening. The moment he feels responsible for carrying another person's emotional stability, his inner alarm system can become active. He starts feeling trapped by expectations he may not even understand. Instead of moving closer, he often feels an even stronger urge to create distance. That is why this pattern repeats itself so often. If this sounds familiar, stay with me, because the next insight explains why responding differently can completely change the emotional energy between two people. A grounded woman often responds in another way entirely. When he becomes quiet, she does not immediately assume the relationship is falling apart. She continues living a meaningful life. She spends time with friends. She enjoys her hobbies. She finishes the book waiting on her nightstand. She exercises, learns new things, laughs, and keeps growing. She is not pretending to be busy to make him jealous. She is simply living a full life because her happiness does not depend on constant reassurance from another person. That quiet independence creates something unexpected. Instead of feeling pressure, he begins to feel curiosity. He notices that she is emotionally steady instead of emotionally chasing him. For someone who has spent years believing relationships always become demanding, this feels completely different. Curiosity slowly replaces fear, and curiosity is often where real connection begins. So remember this important thought as we move forward. The less someone else's temporary distance controls your sense of value, the easier it becomes for genuine connection to grow naturally. Hold on to that idea, because the next lesson builds directly on it, and it may be the one that changes everything. This is not magic, and it is not luck. It is simply how human psychology often works, especially when someone has an avoidant attachment style. The second quality that often catches an avoidant man's attention is surprisingly simple. She creates healthy space without turning it into a silent test. At first you might think, I already give him space. I stop texting when he becomes distant. I leave him alone. But there is a meaningful difference between giving space and naturally creating space, and that small difference changes everything. Giving space can sometimes mean sitting by the phone, waiting for him to return while your emotions remain tied to every notification. Even if you stay silent, your mind is still revolving around him. People often sense that energy without a single word being spoken. Creating space looks completely different. It comes from having a life that continues moving forward, whether he is close or distant. It sounds like, I already have plans this weekend. Let's catch up next week. It comes from someone who has work to enjoy, friends to spend time with, hobbies that bring happiness, and routines that matter. This is not about playing games or pretending to be unavailable. It is about living as a complete person with a meaningful life. Stay with me, because this next idea explains why that matters far more than most people realize. Many emotionally mature women naturally build this kind of balance over time. They develop lasting friendships, meaningful routines, personal interests, and goals that continue whether they are in a relationship or not. They know who they are outside of romance. That quiet confidence often feels deeply comforting to an avoidant man because it sends a message his nervous system rarely hears. It tells him she is not expecting him to become the center of her entire world. It tells him he can move closer without feeling like he must give up his own independence. One of the strongest fears for someone with avoidant tendencies is losing themselves inside a relationship. They often worry that closeness will slowly erase their freedom. So when they meet someone who already has her own direction, her own rhythm, and her own sense of purpose, something changes inside them. She is not waiting for him to decide how every day will unfold. She already has a life she enjoys. That creates emotional safety in a way endless reassurance never could. Here is the beautiful surprise. The more naturally she lives her own life, the more curious he often becomes about being part of it. The less pressure he feels, the more willing he becomes to move closer. Curiosity quietly replaces fear, and for many avoidant people, that is where real connection begins. Keep watching, because the next point is even more powerful, and it explains why genuine vulnerability often succeeds where emotional pressure fails. The third quality is easy to misunderstand, yet it can completely change the emotional dynamic. She shares her feelings without turning them into a demand. Healthy vulnerability is essential in every close relationship. Without it, people stay on the surface and never truly know each other. But there are different ways to express emotions. One way invites closeness, the other unintentionally creates pressure. Imagine saying, "I need to know where this relationship is going because I cannot keep doing this," while listing every fear and disappointment all at once. Those feelings are understandable, but to someone who already fears emotional pressure, that conversation can feel overwhelming. His mind immediately starts searching for an escape because he believes he must fix everything perfectly. Now compare that with a quieter expression like, "I was thinking about you today, and I realized I really enjoy spending time together. Being around you feels peaceful." Nothing is being demanded. There is no hidden test, no expectation that he must instantly match those words. It is simply an honest feeling shared with kindness. For someone who has spent years expecting emotional pressure, this feels completely different. It allows him to receive instead of defend. That is why this kind of openness often creates safety instead of fear. Stay with me, because the final lesson brings all of these ideas together in a way that surprises almost everyone. The fourth quality may sound unexpected, but it is one of the strongest signs of emotional health. She is genuinely at peace with the possibility that the relationship may or may not last. This does not mean she stops caring. It does not mean she acts cold or distant to make him chase her. It means she has built a meaningful life that remains valuable whether he stays or leaves. She truly believes her future can still be joyful, successful, and fulfilling regardless of the outcome. That quiet confidence shows in her choices, her conversations, and the way she carries herself every day. To an avoidant man, this communicates something incredibly powerful. She is choosing him because she wants him, not because she needs someone to complete her life. For someone who has long believed relationships eventually become cages filled with pressure and obligation, this feels refreshing. Being chosen feels very different from feeling trapped. It becomes an invitation instead of a burden. When he realizes her happiness does not depend entirely on him, the weight he has always feared begins to lift. Instead of feeling responsible for another person's emotional survival, he simply feels welcomed into a life that is already full, and that often makes real closeness feel possible for the first time. When you step back, all four of these qualities point toward the same deeper truth. They are not tricks or techniques you perform. They grow naturally from a strong relationship with yourself. They come from knowing your own worth so deeply that another person's changing emotions no longer decide how you see yourself. That inner steadiness allows others to relax around you because they sense they are free to be real without feeling responsible for holding your entire world together. And that is where genuine connection has the greatest chance to grow. I want to clear up one important misunderstanding because there is so much confusing advice about confidence and emotional strength. Real self-confidence does not mean becoming cold. It does not mean acting distant or pretending you no longer care. It is not about hiding your feelings or creating emotional distance just to make someone chase you. That is only an act, and people usually recognize the difference between something that is real and something that is being performed. True inner confidence feels warm. It shows kindness, interest, and genuine care for another person. But underneath that warmth is something steady. There is a quiet belief in your own value that does not rise and fall based on how someone responds to you today. That balance of warmth and emotional stability is incredibly attractive because it allows another person to relax instead of feeling pressure. Someone who has spent years connecting closeness with stress often notices this difference immediately. They begin to experience warmth without fearing hidden expectations. Stay with me because the next example shows exactly what this looks like in everyday life, and you may recognize yourself in it. Imagine he sends you a message on Thursday saying he cannot make your plans for Saturday after all. For many people, that single text immediately creates anxiety. They begin wondering what changed. They replay every conversation in their head, searching for clues. They think about waiting the perfect amount of time before replying. They try to write the perfect response while secretly hoping he realizes how disappointed they are. Sometimes they rush to rearrange everything just to prove they are still available. But a woman with genuine inner confidence reacts differently. She notices her disappointment because her feelings matter, yet she does not let those emotions control every decision she makes. She replies with honesty and calmness. She might simply say, "No problem. I have a few things I wanted to catch up on anyway. Let me know when you're free again." Then she actually continues living her weekend. She meets friends, finishes projects, enjoys her hobbies, or simply rests. Not because she's trying to make him jealous, but because her life already has meaning outside of one relationship. That simple response creates something powerful. It removes unnecessary drama. It does not make him feel guilty or trapped. Instead, it quietly communicates that being close to her does not require walking through an emotional minefield. Over time, moments like these slowly build trust. Keep watching because this next point is where everything comes together. There is another part of this conversation that deserves just as much attention. None of these ideas are really about changing another person. They are about becoming healthier yourself. This is not advice that says, act mysterious and he will come running. That is not the goal. The real goal is becoming someone whose happiness comes from a rich and meaningful life. Imagine a version of yourself that feels connected to friends, family, purpose, meaningful work, personal growth, and the things that genuinely bring joy. That version of you is not only more attractive in relationships, it is also more peaceful, more resilient, and better prepared for a healthy partnership. And we also need to be honest about something many people avoid saying. Not every avoidant man will be ready to grow. Some people stay trapped in old patterns for many years. Some will continue pulling away no matter how safe or understanding you are. If that happens, it is not proof that you failed. It does not mean you are not enough. It simply tells you where that person is on their own journey. One of the greatest strengths that often comes with life experience is understanding you do not need to reshape yourself just to convince someone to choose you. If someone consistently shows they cannot meet your needs, sometimes the healthiest choice is to accept that reality and continue building a beautiful life of your own. When someone with avoidant patterns meets a woman who truly knows herself, something unexpected can begin to happen. She offers warmth without pressure, kindness without control, and closeness without taking away his freedom. Little by little, his nervous system gathers evidence that connection does not always lead to fear. But remember, this is rarely a fast process. Emotional habits built over many years usually change slowly. They change through repeated experiences of safety, honesty, and consistency. That kind of patience is only possible when your own happiness is not dependent on another person's progress. Your life must remain full enough that you never lose yourself while waiting for someone else to grow. This is why these four ideas all point towards the same truth. Do not tie your value to someone else's emotional availability. Build a life that naturally creates healthy space. Share your feelings without turning them into demands. And know deep inside that your future can still be joyful whether one particular relationship succeeds or not. None of this means loving another person less. It means valuing yourself just as deeply. Ironically, that is often what creates the healthiest environment for real love to grow. Now, I would love to hear your thoughts. Which of these ideas spoke to you the most? If something clicked while you were watching, leave the word open in the comments below. And if you enjoy honest conversations about relationships, psychology, and personal growth, subscribe and join us for more thoughtful discussions every week.